Day. Welcome, family, to another wonderful, entertaining edition of the Artivist Thinks We All Be News TV. Today's date is Thursday, July 22nd, 2021. July and the year of 2021 is flying out of here. You thought 2020 was a doozy. Wait till you get a load, or you have been getting a load of 2021. So much to talk about in the news cycle and beyond. Thank you all for tuning in and tuning out to We All Be News and TV. It's News Free Dixie for the 21st century. This is Brother Ron. And you know why I say tune in and tune out? To mark the words of Dr. King, who said it so many years ago, human salvation lies in the hands of the creatively maladjusted. So we're going to be talking about a lot of interesting things today. We've got a return guest, backed by popular demand, a person who's an interesting insight on things from his perspective, a great researcher, also an advocate for the art of media. He's a media master in his own right. And I think he got a large fan base as well. We'll talk about this. But folks, we're going to bring on right now Brother Albert Lanier. How you doing today?
Hi, how are you?
I'm alive. I'm good, man. How you doing? Everything good?
I'm okay thus far. I'm still alive, I'd like to say. So
yeah, it's good. It's good. I was telling the people that you got a very rabid, this very passionate fan base out here in YouTube land. I was not even aware of until like just recently. I mean, there's very interesting people that follow you, man.
Yeah, I don't know if fan base is quite the word for it, but yeah, more like the opposite of fans in the last few weeks, I would say. Let me tell you something. What I've been through in a particular sector of YouTube, that is not only an episode, it's 2 episodes.
Okay. Well, I think you should start a YouTube channel.
Right. Well, you're not the first person to tell me that, and you probably won't be the last. Sorry.
No,
that cost was brought to you by We All Be TV. News Free Dixie.
I do a disclaimer on that. I don't have no patent or anything on that call right there. Post-COVID situation, post-COVID land,
Oh, I didn't even think about that.
No, you good, you good. I always say a disclaimer at the end. You good.
Right. But I was gonna say, yeah, I used to do radio, so when I was listening to you do your spiel, I was like, oh, that's interesting. Yeah, I could easily do a commercial, even though I never did really commercials when I was in radio, play music, oldies rock music. I never did get to be an announcer, so that was interesting. You were listening to We All Be TV, News Free Dixie for the 21st century.
There you go. You might have to get a gig out here. You never know. People be watching. I'm surprised the people that watch the show. I mean, I go out to places. I was at a jazz concert this past weekend. I was at this food truck. These people walk up to me, Brother Ron. I said, "Whoa." Said, I owe y'all money? He said, no, did I sleep with your wife? No, we're fans. We try. Oh, people come up to you. You don't know what they expect.
Wow.
Man. Like, I'm still ain't used to that. People coming up to me. Then another person came up to me. And I said, wow, y'all want to take selfies? And they gave me a donation on the spot. They offered to buy me barbecue. But I said, I just love giving y'all food for thought. So people tell me they've been listening for years. I mean, it's amazing. You go to different places.
Wow.
I mean, no matter where I'm in the country, I don't care if I'm in New York or LA, people could recognize my voice or recognize my face and my trademark hits and stuff like that. So, I mean, it's amazing that people get stuff out of it because, I know I'm getting shadow banned and things like that because the numbers don't reflect the impact because, like I said, I go to different places, people recognize, and they always give me my respect. They'll tell me about shows or episodes I forgot about and people that I interview. So, I mean, it's having an impact.
Right. People are watching.
People are watching.
But I don't blame you. Like, maybe I shouldn't ask, but do you have a number of quote haters on YouTube or?
Yeah, your haters are your fan. I think you say people hate on you, they're your fans. They the most passionate type of fan. Hate is not the opposite of hate and love is. Hate is not the opposite of love. Hate is a form of love. The opposite of hate or love is indifference. When people don't know what they feel about you, you should be wary. When you can polarize people When they think of A.L.L, Lanier, they can either think good or bad or ugly things, but long they have a thought about you. They actually have an opinion about who you are and what you do. You made an impact. So I won't worry about trying to control, because no matter how much good you think you do, you will always be the villain in somebody's story. Give a fuck what you do. I don't
That's
care if you
true.
say the whole bunch
Well,
of
that's
nuns.
very true right
You
now
always
in
be a
a
villain to
particular
somebody.
sector of YouTube. Right.
Yeah. You
I'm
should embrace
seeing
that.
certainly is that, which is interesting. But I was going to say, if hate is a form of love, at this point, in another sector of YouTube, I could do without that kind of love. I'm fine. Keep your love. I don't need it. I'm fine without it. And yeah, like I said, like I said, if I were to tell the whole story, you wouldn't believe it. I don't think
No, I probably
many
would.
people will.
You needed why I would encourage you, because I know you was doing a tour. I thought it was gonna be your farewell tour, but never say never. But you should actually start a YouTube channel and promote your amazing work that you write about. I mean, you're a gifted writer, man. You're a gifted storyteller, a gifted writer, and you got fans out there. And you should start making your
I
social
guess
media
I don't
presence
know.
on YouTube. I mean, the haters are your fans, man. The haters are your fans.
Oh, God! If that I don't. Well, I don't even want
You
to
gotta think like
that.
Kobe, man. Kobe knew his haters were his greatest fans. Your greatest critics are your greatest fans.
I don't. In this particular sector of YouTube, I do not believe these haters are fans of mine. Quite the opposite.
Look. If they take the time to acknowledge you, that you exist, and that you pissed them off, that means you are a part of their life. You are impacting their lives. I mean, you are making
in ways they
some
don't
type
like.
of difference to somebody.
I'm sure. You may have a point there, a slight point, but sorry. I just the very thought of it to me is somewhat repugnant. Haters as fans, and just I mean, I know
keep on doing show. If you don't like it, why you keep on coming on shows and platforms like these to talk about your point of view?
Oh no, that's different. Okay. You know, I get interviewed on all kinds of shows, so the interviews are fine. It's just what I've dealt with lately. That's a whole separate thing, which I won't go into here. But other than to hint certain things, but I mean, your perspective is interesting to me. But like I said, if their hate is a form of love, I can do without that kind of love. That's what I will say.
Okay.
I can do without that form of love. Thank you very much. And as for me being on YouTube, I never really had any interest in my own channel or platform on YouTube. Yeah, it never appealed to me. I frankly, I wouldn't know what to do. I really wouldn't know what to do on YouTube. You're
doing it now. You're talking.
That's true. But people don't like to hear. People elsewhere don't like to hear me talk. They think I'm too long-winded and too boring.
If they thought you was too boring, they would never respond to you at all. You wouldn't have this certain sector on YouTube be responding to your every talk or saying and making all types of interesting observations or about your life or whatever. Like you the man with no legs or some stuff. I don't know what the hell going on, but they say you got no legs. I
don't. Weird but true. That's what somebody thought. Like I said, bizarre.
Yeah, but make you wonder about why people are so fixated on your personal life. Because to me, if people follow me around for 24 hours, they might be disappointed because I don't really focus on people's personal lives. If you are a sports star, it don't really make a difference what you be doing in the bedroom, long as you're not doing something illegal and immoral that involves children or holding somebody against their will. That's another story. But as far as your lifestyle, I'm not concerned with that. If you're a journalist, I'm looking at your work you put out there as a journalist. I'm not looking at what you do or don't do in your personal or private life.
Right. It's well, in some parts of YouTube, what I find is that some parts, including this part, it's like a club almost. It's like a club and a hangout spot. And people are there because they it's a place for them to be, and they don't really, whatever, I don't know what's going on in their lives. I don't know what they've got going on, but apparently it's not enough. It's not satisfying them.
Okay.
And my response to all the haters
Your
or
fans.
anti-fans, as you put it, is a line by Patrice O'Neill,
Okay,
comedian. He said in an interview, he was talking about Hollywood, he said, well, if they didn't make you, they can't break you. So that's my attitude. They didn't make me, so they can't break me. And I'm sure that some of these people will know what I'm talking about, will understand. You know, I know I'm talking via code, but
I mean, you gotta have your code. You gotta have your code. And Sunshine, right. You hang in there now. You hang in there, Sunshine. Don't let them get to you. It comes with the territory.
But yeah,
Sunshine, she good people, man. I like Sunshine. She's a Sagittarius, but she good people.
Oh. Who's bothering her? That's what I'm wondering.
Well, you know, it comes with the territory. Thank you so much for the love. We love you madly, for all the support.
Oh, there you go.
Sister supporter. Yeah, well, it's not. It's YouTube. They take about 50%, but you know, it is what it is. It's love.
Wait, 50%? That much?
Yeah, they be YouTube. They bunch of they do what they do.
God. See, that's why I'm not on YouTube. I like.
Well, I would tell people to do the cash app.
My money. Sorry, YouTube. No offense, but
no, but YouTube was weird. You know, this is about we're at the end of the road with YouTube. Like they really going at truth tellers right now. YouTube was made by truth tellers, and YouTube. Right. I mean, it's the 20th anniversary of 9/11, and YouTube was made by the so-called wacko conspiracy theories and people talking about secret societies and all type of stuff. Now they want to bite their hand and feed them, and now it's time for the people to we got to figure out a better way because I'm not really, I'm trying to pivot right now as we speak. I'm working on certain projects away from YouTube. And and I know I'll give YouTube its props. Thank you for helping me get a platform to amplify the message that I've been trying to do for the last, I've been doing this since 2009 on YouTube. And people say, well, you should have more subscribers. I say, well, if you're telling the truth, truth don't have no fans. Truth has no fans or friends.
Right. And here's another quote I'll put out by Paul Mooney, another comedian. He said, the truth defends itself. I don't need to defend the truth. The truth defends itself. And that's another response I have to the quote fans out there.
Monique, you gotta come on my show. Yeah, I gotta get Monique from Idaho. You gotta come on the show.
Is that the lady right there?
Yeah, she looked like her avatar. She's a beautiful woman. It's like Sunshine. Yeah, she like her avatar. These are beautiful black women.
You got
some nice looking sisters here.
I'll put this politely, but you got some nice looking ladies apparently.
Oh yeah, I just can't get them. I'm in Memphis, man. I mean, the women that like me, they don't live in Memphis. Oh, the cruelty of fate. I got a car though. I got an airline.
It's YouTube making your love life complicated.
Oh yeah,
sounds like a
all YouTube fault. God dang it, YouTube.
Welcome to YouTube.
Okay.
Welcome to YouTube, making your love life complicated.
Broken dreams and promises. YouTube can be a part of YouTube. But let's talk about.
You were saying about YouTube, right? Here's the interesting thing that you said about YouTube. And I can say this because I do not have a show on YouTube or active channel on YouTube or anything like that. And so what I can say is you're absolutely right about the conspiracies and secret societies and to a great extent 9/11. When I started out being interviewed in 2009, about the time I guess you got started on YouTube, I started getting interviewed on shows in 2009. I started getting interviewed online, of course, what we would call new media, radio shows online and elsewhere, and radio shows that are digital, that are broadcast, and other shows, podcasts and other shows online. And often the shows that I were on, the hosts were into conspiracies. They were discussing conspiracies, and it was 9/11. Some of them were into 9/11.
Oh yeah.
Now, I don't know if these shows are around, but I'll recite a few shows. That's why I said, it's funny. I've been on shows for over a decade. I've been interviewed for over a decade. But like the comedian Bill Hicks, I cite a lot of comedians, don't I?
Yeah, I love
a lot of comedians. But comedians are truth tellers in many respects.
The greatest ones, anyway, the best ones. They're not always appreciated in their lifetime, of course, but the best ones are truth tellers. Yeah.
Right. But I think of Bill Hicks used to say when he was performing in all these small little out of the way places and all these towns, he called it the UFO tour. And so that's what I've called my early life when I was being interviewed. I call it the UFO tour, because I was doing shows where hosts were into conspiracies and some of them were into 9/11 conspiracies. And that's how I was interviewed as a guest. So it's easy to dismiss early YouTube or the internet early on, but what I found in terms of just being interviewed online was I've never done commercial television. I've done commercial radio, but I've never done commercial television. I've never been interviewed on huge outlets. Even huge outlets on YouTube, I've never been interviewed.
Right.
And well, here's what I found from the very beginning. I could say what I want, say it for as long as I needed to, and not have to worry about a lot of censorship, which was kind of unusual. I was somebody who had never been interviewed even as a journalist before. And I was in a medium where I could really just, that's why people think I'm long-winded, because I had to go on shows where the host would ask like 5 questions. And I had to add, and I would give like 15-minute answers per question, because that's what they wanted me to do. They weren't telling me that, but it was pretty clear what they wanted. And you can't do that on TV, because in TV, they give you what, 2 minutes? And you're just getting started after 20 seconds. And then in a minute, 40, you'll be done. So you've got to be like on commercial television and on cable and on some of these other outlets, where I was starting on outlets where I could say whatever I pretty much wanted, and I could say it for as long a period as I needed to. That's the power of podcasts, for example. You can have conversations, you can have real interviews, and maybe they aren't the best interviews on some podcasts, depending on the host, depending on the subject, depending on the issue, but you can have real interviews and you can have real discussions on these podcasts and on YouTube shows like this one. I mean, I've been on YouTube shows. I've done shows in the past few weeks and months, and I'm on a YouTube show for 2 hours. You think CNN would let me on for 2 hours, or MSNBC, or goodness, or Universe Help Us, Fox News? No. The networks certainly wouldn't do it. You get maybe 1.5 to 2 minute segment, CBS, ABC, NBC. So when I look at my years having been interviewed, I just consider myself so fortunate. I've been able to say pretty much what I want to say. That's why I don't mind doing interviews. I don't mind being on a show like this, because I know I go on the networks, and again, I don't have any problem with CNN saying we want to interview Albert Lanier. Hey, you want to talk to me? Great. They won't, because they have no reason to.
Smart, they will give you a show on CNN, help their ratings probably. You're an interesting dude.
Oh yeah, I've heard their ratings have gone down since Trump. Of course, the difference between Donald Trump and I is he's banned from, I think, Twitter and Facebook and so forth. But I'm on Twitter and I'm on Facebook. That's a big difference.
Well, he saved Twitter as far as I'm concerned. Donald Trump saved for this disrespect they showed him. He saved that dying platform. He gave him an extra lifeline.
You may have a slight point there. You might have, I have to say, I didn't use Twitter all that much before I retired, which was in 2017, where my retirement was. I've since come out of retirement to be a freelancer again, though not a journalist again. But I started going on Twitter more, even though I had it in 2017. And I realized, now I see why Trump was on Twitter. this is great. I can't believe but I did that as discipline, because I said, if I spend so much time on Twitter and on Facebook, I won't get my articles done. I won't write my pieces. I'll just be on here all day. So I had to discipline myself, which I kind of used to, kind of a fairly rigid self-discipline that you have to have as a writer and to a certain extent journalist. But I would reduce myself to like an hour of Facebook a day and not be on Twitter. So that's why I really kind of rediscovered Twitter, or discovered it really, even though I was on it, in 2017 and onward. And I enjoy it. I go on Twitter every day and discover what it is. But for me, that's something I've had to do, is discipline yourself in regards to social media. But yeah, when I look at YouTube and when I look at a lot of the shows in new media, I have to say right off the bat, I've said this before and I'll say it again, but I'll say it here. I'm very grateful to shows like yours, WeLB TV, and I'm grateful to shows that had me in the past. Shows like TV News Lies in New York City, Outside the Box in Portland, Oregon, at the time. Shows like Media Monarchy in Portland, Oregon. The Corbett Report in Japan. Those were some of the shows that I was on. And it's interesting because we're going to be talking about secret societies, but I actually, and I don't talk about this too much, but I actually talked to a producer of the Alex Jones show a number of years ago. And at the time, Alex was not a national name. He was not a well-known name. He wasn't the, I don't know, conspiracy joke that he became, or a cautionary tale that he became. But I had spoken to a producer, I can't remember the year, maybe 2011, maybe 2010, 2011, I can't remember. But I almost came close to doing the Alex Jones show. Now, that might have been an interesting experience. But yeah, I had talked to a producer, and I only knew him as a radio show host in Texas and as a documentary filmmaker. I've since then wrote my expose of him, The Alex Jones Deception. And he was somebody, when you talk about secret societies, he's a guy that really took some of these publications that deal with aspects of secret societies that are usually self-published or privately published, very small publishers, and other aspects of what I would call the, quote, conspiracy infrastructure, which is an old phrase I use to deal with conspiracies in media and various parts of media, TV, radio, and internet. And books like the Creature from Jekyll Island. I think you had the Truth and Money book, and of course, the one that Alex cites as a influence, None Dare Call It Conspiracy, which I actually had a copy of years ago. Now, I have to admit at this point that I'm somebody who studied as an intellectual hobby of myself, on my own, when I wasn't writing an article or doing a piece. I studied as an intellectual hobby conspiracies and secret societies. I began studying secret societies and conspiracies, but the secret society part as well, in the 1990s when I was much younger. And back then, there was no internet infrastructure. There was no internet discussion, I think, maybe on some boards, perhaps, some chat rooms, perhaps, of terms like Illuminati. Now, Illuminati is internet wide. I mean, it's all over the internet. But back in the 90s, when I was looking into it, nobody would know what the Illuminati was. If I said Illuminati, they probably thought, oh, is that an Italian restaurant across the street? They didn't know. But now it's all over the internet. Everyone's Illuminati, according to a lot of these bozos online. But I started looking into secret societies when I was much younger. in the 20s. Now, he brings up, let's see, Nelson Aldrich, this guy here, Michael.
Yeah.
Nelson Aldrich, right?
He was a senator, right? He was a senator from Rhode Island too.
Yeah, well, you had an Aldrich that was a senator from, I believe, Rhode Island. And when you talk about the Federal Reserve, I mentioned previously the book Creature from Jekyll Island, written by, I think it was G. Edward Griffin. Now, although I'm not discussing that in terms of the secret societies I'll be talking about, that book is quite an interesting book. I do recommend that book, Creature from Jekyll Island. Especially if you want to deal with, sorry?
The Senator Aldrich, his daughter married into the Rockefeller family, I'm not mistaken.
I think so. I think he may have had. I know Aldrich
I can
was
look that up.
Senator,
I believe his daughter married to the Rockefeller family too.
Senator Aldrich, yeah, right. There was a relation, I think, between Aldrich and Rockefeller. Senator Aldrich was one of the forces behind what became to be known as the Federal Reserve Act. And of course, in the book Creature from Jekyll Island, Jekyll Island is an island off the coast of Georgia. It's kind of a resort spot. And this is where the people who are planning to get the Federal Reserve Bank, which is the major central bank essentially of the United States. Technically it's banks because you have 12 banks in different cities plus the Fed, the main Fed. But the Federal Reserve Bank was planned and organized there, the approach of how to get this passed in Congress, the strategies and tactics at Jekyll Island, which is off the coast of Georgia. And so, like I said, I recommend Creature from Jekyll Island. I recommend that book, especially if you're interested in monetary policy and economics and so forth. Although I'm somebody who studied conspiracies, but I am not a proponent so much of conspiracies in general.
Have you heard the book Secrets of the Federal Reserve by Eustace Mullins?
Yeah, I've heard the name. Yeah, I think I've heard the title of that book.
You never read that book, Secrets of the Federal Reserve? He actually was commissioned to write that book. And what's interesting about that book, he used the archives, I think, of the Library of Congress. Because I mean, when you do conspiracies at this level, they always leave paper trails. They want you to know they did it, but they're gonna put it in a book on a library somewhere. But he actually was commissioned by a renowned literary figure who was actually a mental health patient at St. Elizabeth's outside of DC. I can't think of his name right now. Ezra Pound. I think his name was Ezra Pound.
Ezra Pound was a major American poet.
Not only that, he discovered the Hemingways and the Faulkners and the T.S. Eliot's. He was their first publisher or editor. Though, I mean, he was a major literary figure, right? That's Ezra Pound.
You're absolutely correct.
Yeah.
In fact, somebody who studied English, studied literature and studied English in college. When I was a kid, I used to read his poetry, Ezra Pound.
Okay.
The problem with Ezra Pound, of course, is that he was rabidly anti-Semitic and basically was against the Allies during World War II. I think he had made radio programs.
Yeah, in Italy. He was out in Italy broadcasting.
Right. He was making major, or at least significant, I guess you could call it propaganda broadcast, or at least radio broadcast, fulminating against the Allies.
You know what the problem really was? It wasn't that he was anti-Semitic. He was getting people to think. He was a thought provocateur. You are an artist, you get people to think. It's not important that they think like you think, but to get them to start questioning authority. Because this whole thing, he commissioned Eustace Mullins to write about the history of the Federal Reserve, because he lost a lot of his literary friends, a lot of his artistic friends died in World War I. People understand that was before World War II. A lot of people, millions of people died, and a lot of artists, a lot of creatives died in World War I. Some of them were his friends. So he's trying to figure
Right.
out what this stuff really about, because they want to label folks so-called anti-this and anti-that because they don't go along with the official story. So he had a media platform that he amplified his point of view on, and he was a prisoner of war. They say he was an enemy of the state, right? They arrested him, put him in a mental institution, St. Elizabeth, and that's how he commissioned Eustace Mullins to write about the secret of the Federal Reserve, the history.
Well, he got off. He got off lucky, because he could have been put in prison for what he did.
I mean, they put him in the mental institution. They did imprison him.
Right. He, like I said, he avoided it by going into the how do I put it? The enchanted castle.
But they discredit him. They
go.
discredit him by putting him in prison. They discredit him, I mean, in mental institution for years.
Right.
They had him in there.
That's
for
one
years.
way to discredit people. It, you know, if you put them in a mental institution, it's also a way to avoid prison to a certain extent. I mean, after all, someone like John Hinckley was found not guilty of trying to assassinate Ronald Reagan by reason of insanity.
With Hinckley, though,
put in a mental institute.
He didn't shoot Reagan. It came. People said they heard the shot came from above them. The shot that was fired to Reagan came from above. It didn't come from Hinckley. There's a lot of stuff to that, because you know what's funny? It's not funny. They're trying to get Reagan to Bethesda Naval Hospital, where they killed Senator Joseph McCarthy and the first Secretary of Defense,
Forrestal.
Huh?
Is that Forrestal?
Yeah, they killed him. It was a suicide. They threw him out the window.
Yeah, he supposedly went out a window.
Yeah, they had Trump there. Remember, they had Trump there. He got his ass out of there too. Trump had a little parade. I'm getting the hell out of here. That's what they did the Kennedy autopsy. But yeah, they're trying to get Reagan to Bethesda so they could kill him. From people that told me that no, they said because the closest hospital was George Washington University Hospital, and luckily for him, they took him there. But they're trying to get him to Bethesda Naval so they could finish him off. But Hinckley didn't even kill Reagan. The shot didn't come from Hinckley.
Hinckley is suspicious, of course, because his brother was supposed to have died with go to dinner with one of George H.W. Bush's sons.
Oh, the Hinckley family had a connection with the Bush family, right? They were close. They're connected.
Right.
The Bush and Hinkley's are
connected. That was very hinky.
And Bush was VP, right? George H.W. was the VP, former director of the CIA. He could not recall where he was at November 22nd, 1963, but he could recall where he was at December 7, 1941 when Pearl Harbor happened. But he can't recall where he was at November 22nd, 1963. But you recall something that happened 20-some years earlier, though.
Right.
That's crazy to me, man.
Well,
it's insanity.
They are when you get to be a politician and that level of authority and hierarchy, you could say, your mind, you suffer from selective amnesia. Where was I? What was I doing?
Right.
I don't recall. I'm not aware. I just don't know. All of that.
I want to say this dude made a great point. And that's the whole point. We got to have these type of talks, man. He says the huge difference between being anti-Semitic and opposition to Zionist Jews and Bolshevik Jews. Being opposed to specific Jewish programs is not. And what's wrong with questioning things? Y'all forget that some Jews help finance Adolf Hitler. You got to thank Hitler for Israel. And y'all can look into that. I mean, this stuff is deep, man. It's real deep because what's crazy? What is it? Henry Ford had a newspaper back in the day that talk about anti-Zionism and stuff like that.
Right. He was, I think, taking parts of the anti-Semitic book, Protocols of the Elders of Zion.
Right. He had a newspaper based around that.
On his, and the newspaper, I believe.
And also, he would do it.
Another guy who rapidly
he was producing vehicles for Hitler too. He was producing vehicles for Hitler.
Oh yeah.
See, wars.
There's a lot of business going on.
Yeah, but I mean, DuPont family.
A lot of business going on in World War II.
Yeah.
The idea that World War II was a good war is ridiculous.
It was a horrible war.
Good war. It wasn't good for anyone, except unless you were wealthy and well connected. then
And
it was
it was
probably good.
into that war though. But you know what's funny? Even the leaks had they folks in the war. Like Bush Senior was in the war. Yeah, Joe Kennedy, the eldest son of the Kennedy clan, he lost his life. Even Roosevelt had a son. He had cousins in the war. Teddy Roosevelt had a son who died of a heart attack. He was a general after he led the Normandy D-Day invasion, I believe. So I mean, you had so many folks had their people in the war, but
Right.
it's funny. Like it's
You
not
had an
funny.
American sense of noblesse oblige, which is if you're wealthy, if you're well-to-do, you get involved in civic matters, you serve in the military. That kind of existed in the 19th century and early part of 20th century. And then after, I'd say, both World War I and World War II, it ended. World War I was a shock to the system in Europe and the US and a lot of other places because of the loss of life, staggering loss of life, not only of working class people and poor people who were enlisted, but also of middle class, upper middle class, and wealthy people who were writing poetry. For example, I read, poetry of British soldiers who died in the war.
What Ezra Pound was talking about. He lost his literary friends. He lost a lot of them. He's trying to figure out why are they fighting these type of wars. And you gotta even look at Franklin Roosevelt. People think now, Pearl Harbor, it'll be the anniversary of Pearl Harbor, December 7th. Would it be like the 80th anniversary of Pearl Harbor coming up December 7th? And people said that Roosevelt knew about it. But what people don't understand, be like Lucky Luciano said it best: behind every great wealth, there's a great crime. Franklin Roosevelt's grandfather was one of the biggest drug dealers in American history. He used to sell opium to the Chinese. They made a fortune off the opium wars. This is Warren Delano Jr. This is Franklin Roosevelt's grandfather made the family fortune selling drugs or opium to the Chinese. So people said that he was trying to get involved in World War II so he could take back the Golden Triangle for his family. He wanted to control the Southeast Asian drug trade, like American gangster style. These are the real American gangsters, not this Frank Lucas stuff. These are folks who grandsons become presidents.
American wannabe gangster, really.
Yeah, but these are the real ones. The biggest drug dealers are
Frank Lucas.
You mentioned the biggest drug dealers and gangsters are Ivy League. They're Ivy League people. They thugs that wear suits and stuff and got degrees. They the biggest gangsters on the planet.
Right. The biggest crooks are always the biggest crooks have MBAs, not GEDs.
Right, that's right.
Remember that phrase? The biggest crooks have MBAs, some of them PhDs, though I won't malign the PhD, but some of the biggest crooks have MBAs, not GEDs or high school diplomas.
I mean, it's fascinating, man. It's a rich man's trick, man. I mean, majority of people in the world are working poor people, are impoverished. So, like, you look at somebody like Jeff Bezos and Richard Branson and Elon Musk. I don't know why people worship these people. They get billions of dollars of grants from the government. They are the biggest beneficiaries of corporate welfare. They're using taxpayers' money who can't afford their rent. So they use our taxpayer dollars to send these clowns to joyride around the planet and enter outer space where folks getting kicked out of their homes. They won't give us $2,000 a month, but they'll give these clowns billions of dollars of taxpayer money to fund their little adventures. And we think these are the heroes, and they're not heroes. Right. They shouldn't be worshipped. It's insane.
Jeff Bezos went up in his rocket, and I was hoping that he wouldn't come back.
I maybe feel it. I don't think. I think
he wouldn't come back.
Out loud what folks thinking, huh?
Yeah, that's right. I said it. Looks like I won't be having a book on Amazon now.
Well, my thing is this: while you look to the wealthiest people to solve society's issues, they make money off society issues. Why do I want to eliminate poverty when I'm making a killing off of poverty for profit? You don't talk to the wealthiest people to solve the world's problem. They're not interested in solving the world's problem, because to solve the world's problem means they lose their wealth. They lose their fortune.
Well, it's not so much they lose their wealth and their fortune. Some of them might. The thing is that when it comes to poverty is a constant in human history. They're always poor and they're always rich. And so the only intermediary step, as someone who is a leftist, I can openly say, is that people, if they're going to be poor, they should at least have the basics of life that can sustain them for not only through childhood, but adolescence and a little beyond, right? They should have a house to live in. They should have food to eat. They should have water that isn't polluted or tainted, and that they can drink. You know, hint, Flint, Michigan. They should have enough education that they will be able to go out and get a job. And they should have jobs that provide them with wages that they can pay rent and they can pay their bills and have a little extra. And that's basically what you need for poor people and working class people. If you cannot eliminate poverty entirely, if you cannot completely wipe it out, because poverty is, of course, part of the zero-sum game of capitalism, right? That's why it's called the zero. That's why capitalism and everything that goes with it is a zero-sum game. It's zero for you, some gain for them, meaning the 1% or top 10%. So the 99% get zero. The sum and the gains go to the top 10%. I'm sorry, I say, or the top 1%. So the top 1% get the gain, and the bottom 99% get the shaft. Zero-sum game.
I would say get rid of corporations. Like, go back to what Adam Smith said in The Wealth of Nations centuries ago. Let corporations be limited enterprise. Get rid of that 1% cushion, like you said. I mean, get rid of it. And feed and invest back in the middle class.
Now, you just mentioned something very interesting. Here is what I propose in regards to it. Never thought I'd be saying this today, but here's something that I would propose. Actually, you don't need corporations. I mean, I can understand why they are, because of partly the use of the 14th Amendment to render them as persons. But if you really want to deal with companies and you want to keep them in line, get rid of corporations, get rid of S Corp, C Corp, LLCs, all of that, and go back to charters. In the 19th century and early on in this country, companies and firms had to have charters from the state. And a charter would last only so long. I think it changed partly because of a Supreme Court decision. I forget the title of it. I think it involved New Hampshire. I may be wrong, but the Supreme Court decision that kind of changed this, because it's mostly court decisions in regards to these companies, corporations. But if you really want to go after corporations or really want to regulate business, I would say go back to charters. The state can bestow a company with a charter, and it lasts X amount of years. If the state decides, hey, we'll allow you to continue further because your company seems to be successful and seems to be following the law and following the procedures that are mandated as per the law, then we'll extend your charter. If not, we revoke the charter and we revoke and end your company. Now, you notice that there are, quote, charter schools, right? In education, charter is bestowed by the state, but it's with school. So charters in schools can be revoked. So what I'm saying is get rid of S Corp, C Corp, all forms of incorporation. Go back to charters, and the charters would serve as a way to discipline and to keep business people and businesses in line. It was used years ago, 19th century and before. Can easily come back now. We see it in operation in the schools. I'm not saying they're the best move, but in terms of charter schools themselves. But you can use charters. So that would be my recommendation. That'd be my recommendation. Oh, man, what I'm asking is that's far too severe. There's no way, because the business class, the top 1%, the top 10%, the business class, the elites, ruling class, whatever you want to call them. They have a stranglehold and a lock on the government. And so that government has been able to regulate in their favor, whether it's through Supreme Court decisions, whether it's through congressional laws, and whether it's through other bodies, and they work through bodies like A.L.L, American Legislative Exchange Council. So, and of course, there's the U.S. Chamber of Commerce and the Business Roundtable. But if you really want to deal with business and you really want to deal with that, go with charters, I say. Get rid of corporations, get rid of corporate status, go back to charters, have the state involved. We'll bestow this for a certain amount of time. We'll see how you do. You obey the laws. If you're ethical, if you're not doing stuff that's illegal, we'll extend the charter. If you're not, sorry, end of your business. But I don't think that's going to happen.
I mean, anything's possible. I mean, like I said, like Adam Smith, Wealth of Nations too. I mean, he talked about limiting the power of corporations. Like you create a corporation and build like a project, like a bridge. Once the bridge is completed, you dissolve said corporation. And the problem is, like, even when you talk about the Federal Reserve, here's the thing. Woodrow Wilson was running against William Howard Taft, who was the vice president under Teddy Roosevelt. William Howard Taft was a very popular president, but he was not for the Federal Reserve. William Howard Taft ended up becoming a Supreme Court justice of all things. I think he really wanted to be more of a Supreme Court justice than a president.
I think he really wanted to be Supreme Court justice.
But here's the thing. The only way they got that Federal Reserve passed was because Woodrow Wilson became president. And he became president because he made the deal with them. People said, look, y'all make me president, I'll pass the Federal Reserve into existence. And so what they did, they enticed Teddy Roosevelt to come out of retirement to split the Republican vote
against
the Bull Moose Party. So they split, because Taft could have won, but Teddy split the vote and Woodrow got in. And so Woodrow Wilson, to my understanding, said one of his biggest regrets was help to create the Federal Reserve, because it's not controlled by the government.
Somewhere, something along that line.
But he still was an elf, but that's another story. We could talk about Woodrow Wilson later. But.
Sorry. So I guess I should get to what we're supposed to talk about, which are secret societies.
We're talking about it right now. We're making this history more
roundabout, more like policies and other things, but specifically. So let me lay out what I'm going to discuss. And you might wonder, why am I talking about secret societies? Because the secret societies that I talk about, summertime is an important time for them. They either meet and convene or have their gatherings in summertime. Not all of them, but not all the ones I'm talking about, but at least a couple of them. That's one of the reasons. So in discussing secret societies, I'm going to deal with three. There are a number of secret societies, and if you look at the internet, you look at parts of the internet, YouTube, you'll find a number of secret societies. And you could easily go through 10 of them. But I thought, because it's summer and this is more specifically focused, I would deal with three. The three that I will deal with are Skullenbones, Bohemian Grove, and the Bilderberg Group.
Okay.
So before I begin, let me just lay out what my definition of a secret society is. And this is my own definition. I didn't get it from anywhere. I just made this from having studied secret societies myself many years ago, and doing a little bit more research to prepare for this show. I decided to come up with a definition of characteristics, definition that defines the characteristics of secret societies. Now, what are secret societies? What are their characteristics? The first characteristic is that it has, number one, secret membership and is very selective. In other words, not anyone can join. You have to be someone who is not elected, but selected. You have to be in some societies tapped or contacted or made known about their choice. And in some societies, you don't join, they choose you. Okay. So the first characteristic, secret membership, and selectivity. Not anyone can join, not anyone can be a part of it. And the membership generally is secret, which means it's not made public. You know, some so-called secret societies, people find out who's in them, but generally the whole point is secret membership. That's the first one. Second one is rituals and tradition. With some secret societies, they have their own, sometimes arcane, sometimes bizarre rituals and traditions that they're used to doing. Now, people who have been in fraternities and colleges understand the idea of rituals and traditions. Fraternities are kind of college fraternities are both secret and not secret. They're public yet private. So the idea of rituals and traditions occur, right? You know, you think about fraternity hazing and other kinds of aspects of fraternities, right? There are rituals. There are aspects that go on that are followed year by year, decade by decade. So the second part is rituals and traditions. The third is that these secret societies, and the final one, I should say, the third and final one is that these secret societies engage in private discussions and can make decisions. Now, the last part on decisions doesn't always happen. Decisions aren't always made there. Sometimes they are and sometimes they aren't. But normally these are private discussions that go on, meaning no media in some of these societies, and no one dare to ask probing, pointed questions on behalf of the general public. They're private, and they're intended to be private and meant for members and maybe a few guests, select guests, to discuss and talk openly amongst themselves. So let me go over that again. The definition and thus characteristics of secret societies. Number one, secret membership and selectivity. Number two, rituals and traditions. Number three, private discussions and decisions. And that's my definition and the characteristics of secret societies. So understand this as we go further in this discussion, because it'll be important, maybe important for you to refer mentally to these characteristics and this definition. So I'd like to begin by looking at our first secret society. And our first secret society is actually, speaking of fraternities, not quite a fraternity, but it's a secret society on the campus of a college, actually a university. And the university is Yale University in New Haven, Connecticut. This secret society was founded in 1832 and happens to be called Skull and Bones. Now, as I mentioned, this was founded in the 19th century, and it was founded by at least two men. The first was Alphonso Taft, who I believe was related to one of the future presidents of the United States. Another was called William Russell. Now, Russell himself is an important figure, or relatively important figure, in the founding of Skull and Bones, because Russell himself had studied in Germany for a little while. And he was no doubt familiar with German secret societies. So when you look at Skull and Bones, if you happen to do your own research and you happen to look into it, Skull and Bones bears a similarity, I believe, to certain German secret societies. Which ones, I'm not quite sure. But there's that connection because William Russell had studied in Germany and became familiar with their secret societies and their groups in that country. And there is that Germanic influence on Skull and Bones. As per the name, you have the symbol, which is the skull and crossbones, right? One bone over another, right? Now, what you may be familiar in terms of that symbol is with pirates. You know, in movies, it's not unusual to have a skull and crossbones, right? For a flag. Now, you have the symbol of the skull and the crossbones. You also have a number. The number is 322. Now, normally people associate this number with ancient Athens, with ancient Greece, the ancient Greek city-states. But the way I look at it, 322 could mean anything. It could be a reference to the founding of it, right? Because it was founded in 1832, and you add an additional 2 for some other meaning, right? Now, Skull and Bones, of course, is a society that, as per its traditions at Yale, it's a senior society, and they choose 15 members every year. And so what the tradition used to be was that you would have, on what was known in April as Tap Day, a number of people that would be out in a square. And if you were chosen for Skull and Bones, someone would tap you on the shoulder and say something along the lines of Skull and Bones, accept, or something along that line. And at some point, you would have to move on to the, eventually you would be given instructions. And you would have to go to what is known as the Tomb, which is the headquarters of Skull and Bones, the campus. That's what it's usually called. And as per, I think, the tradition, in one hand, you have to hold a book, and the other hand, you have to knock on the door, I think at least 3 times. Again, Skull and Bones is generally a senior society. It's chosen by the members. So the members keep tabs on other students, check to see which students would be quite a right fit within their society. Skull and Bones has a reputation for secrecy, as per any secret society, but a real reputation for secrecy because the members are not supposed to talk about it. Now, some of the members that are well known include politicians like John Kerry, who was a senator who had run for president in 2004, against another member of Skull and Bones, George W. Bush, who was president for 2 terms. And his father, George H.W. Bush, meaning George W. Bush's father, George H.W. Bush, was also a Bonesman. And I believe, so you had those 3 fairly well known. You had other Bonesmen as well. But the tradition is that they're not supposed to talk. Both Kerry and Bush, I think, were interviewed on Meet the Press, and they were asked about Skull and Bones, and asked, it's a secret society, and they replied something to the effect of, yeah, it's so secret we can't talk about it. So the members are not supposed to talk about it. They're not supposed to discuss it. So in effect, they would have what I think is known in the secret society, in terms of some organizations, what is known as Chatham House rules, meaning you don't discuss, you don't talk, right? So secrecy is at the forefront of aspects of Skull and Bones. And of course, Skull and Bones is known because it's a society at one of the more elite universities in the United States, Yale, but also because of its the significance of its members being in the ranks of businessmen and politicians. So it's a network, and people who are business people or people who have careers and professions understand about networking. Well, this is the ultimate form of networking, because like a fraternity or like a club, there's a fidelity, there's a sense of obligation, not only to the rules and the byways and folkways, but also to each other, also to the members. And again, Skull and Bones is, I think, become notorious and well known because of people like George W. Bush, President of the United States, his father, George H.W. Bush, who became President of the United States, John Kerry, who ran for President of the United States and was a senator from the state of Massachusetts. So a lot of it, you also had individuals like the Harrimans, for example. So, I mean, it's not unusual for members of the elite, people from various aspects, various industries, science of industries, to be members of Skull and Bones. So this is a collegiate secret society at Yale. And the significance is that its members don't just engage in arcane rituals and odd traditions and weird pranks or weird private pranks or what have you, or whatever and whatever else goes on there. If they were just private cranks, it'd be okay, but it's probably beyond that. But it's that they move from being at Yale, being in Skullenbones, to positions of power, positions of influence, positions of authority. That's the significant thing about Skull and Bones. And that's one of the reasons that it's been on the radar as one of the major secret societies in the United States. It's this elite selective society. Now, it used to be all male. My understanding is now that women can be chosen for Skull and Bones, as can other types of individuals. But again, it is still a very secretive, very elusive, very hidden society and secret society on the campus of Yale. And the subject of much rumor and much speculation. And so that's our first secret society, Skull and Bones. Now, people may be familiar with Skull and Bones, maybe from movies. If you've seen the movie, I think it was The Good Shepherd with Matt Damon. The character in that movie is someone who becomes a member of Skull and Bones and goes through supposedly one of the rituals, from what I understand, that bonesmen go through if they are members of Skull and Bones. So that's, again, one of our first secret society that we're going to examine and we've looked into. Now, I cite Skull and Bones because we start at a collegiate level, right? And we want to sort of work our way upward in the kind of, if you want to call it the ladder of secret societies, in a sense. I've kind of structured it like a ladder where you move up one rung and then you're another and then another. And I thought we start out at the college level, at the collegiate level. So that's our very first secret society. And so, Warren, what are your thoughts on Skull and Bones?
That's a great summation. William Howard Taft's father was the founder, one of the founders of Skull and Bone.
Right.
Taft, yeah, that's his father. So William Howard Taft was a part of that. Prescott Bush was also a part of that. Prescott Bush,
that's true.
The father of George H.W. Bush and the grandfather of George W. Bush. They said he was involved in the theft of Geronimo's skull for Skull and Bones, that they held in their possession the skull of Geronimo.
Right. Prescott Bush went on to become a senator from Connecticut, right, I believe. And he was I believe he was kind of I don't know what patron is the word, but he was kind of a bit of a supporter of Richard Nixon. And I don't know if he was an avid supporter, but he kind of was kind of a bit of an influence to Richard Nixon.
And also he got the Nazi connection too as well. I mean,
yes, that's Brown Brothers Harriman. Brown Brothers Harriman and the Union Banking Corporation.
He almost lost his son in World War II. George H.W. Bush. He got shot down. I think he was like the youngest fighter pilot at that time. I think he was like 19 or something, or 20. So I mean, it's just intriguing. We started thinking about all this stuff, and that movie, The Good Shepherd. Well, also about the thing about them screwing each other in coffins, allegedly. Becoming this
year. You hear about some of the rituals, and you hear about some of the things. Some of it I just didn't want to talk about for obvious reasons. But yeah, there are all kinds of sort of strange goings on, supposedly, that I've heard in regards to Skull and Bones.
Yeah, I saw the first Skull and Bones movie, and also I saw The Good Shepherd. It talks about the origins of the CIA too. A lot of them were Skull and Bone people. Right.
Ivy League, yeah. That's one of the differences, I think, between say CIA and FBI, which were and probably still are competing branches in regards to intelligence agencies. that the CIA was this sort of Ivy League staffed and filled intelligence agency, and the FBI was not as preppy, not preppy and elite. It was a bit more middle class, maybe a little working class. But
well, you know, J. Hoover, he went to George Washington University, and he used to work at the Library of Congress. That's why he was so good at organizing information later on, because he was a librarian who came from George Washington University. So he didn't come from that type of background as, you know, the Bushes and stuff, and the Tafts and the Careys. I believe one of John Kerry's ancestors was a big time drug dealer too. I think he was involved in the opium trade with the Chinese. I mean, these folks, man.
Right.
You talking about
That's how a number of people made their money in the 19th century, was opium.
Yeah.
That's how some of this, and you know, that's also, you know, if it wasn't opium for some, it was alcohol during Prohibition. If you move on decades later, it's alcohol during Prohibition.
Yeah, that's how you got. See, the real organized crime is the establishment. It's not the gangsters, because Lucky Luciano and them would not head what they had without the government creating that atmosphere for that to happen. Now you look at the DEA. You know, I remember reading an article some years ago. I think it was El Chapo cartel. They control like 85% of drug trade in Chicago. But the reason why that was because they had to deal with the DEA to snitch out other cartels. And that was in the newspaper. And I mean, people don't really read. So why is El Chapo in jail when he was collaborating with the government, with the DEA? Why they put him in prison? It's like Lucky Luciano when he got to deal with the government. He helped them out with logistics during World War II. They deported him out the country, and he helped with the French connection. He helped with the drug. He helped establish the international drug trade for us, the U.S. I mean, this stuff is kind of strange. You start looking at this stuff and you start hiding the contradictions. Like, this stuff don't make sense. It's like they undermine their own interests, but in reality,
it doesn't make sense if you believe the ideas that are purported to you, right? If you believe that justice prevails and law and order always wins and all of this sort of nonsense, then it doesn't make sense. Reality, the world is somewhat black, and is black and white. It's sort of like the Taoist symbol. It's sort of black and white in the same sphere. You know what I mean? It's good and evil. That's what society is fundamentally. It's good and evil.
But who defines the good and who defines the evil, though? I think that's more of a personal. You got to have your own personal code when it comes to good and evil.
And that's why society, that's part of one of the functions of societies, depending on the extent of the society. If it's a small society or if it's a larger society, it's definitions. Take the word terrorist, for example. A terrorist is a definition. If you're on one side of the equation, you're a terrorist. And if you're not on the other side, you're a freedom fighter, or you're a just revolutionary. So the definitions vary in the society.
Yeah, you know, when you just said that, it reminded me what John Brown said. He said, if I was fighting on the interests of the white slave owning class, I'll be a hero to y'all. But because I'm fighting on the interests of the slave, I'm a terrorist and all this stuff. So I'm saying, like, no matter how much good you think you're doing, you always gonna be the villain in somebody's story. Somebody got to show about you being the villain.
See, here's the difference. You'll be the villain only if they get away with defining you as a villain. That's why it's important to try to control as much of your narrative as possible.
I agree.
It's not always possible to do that, but you want to control as much of your narrative as possible. Don't let others lie, because the lie will define you. People will accept the lie rather than the truth. One of the things I say is always put the truth out there when somebody lies, because it gives people the option to accept the truth. They may accept it, they may not, but at least you've given them the option to accept the truth. Otherwise, the lie wins. And if the lie wins, you lose, because you're defined by the lie. And this happens all the time. It happens all the time for movie stars. It happens all the time for celebrities. It happens all the time for politicians. It happens all the time for a whole host of people. The lie wins and the truth loses because the truth isn't put out there. A lot of times it's not allowed to be put out there. That's why it's important to find a way to get the truth out about if regards you or someone you know or something along that line. It's important to get the truth out, because if the truth doesn't get out, people don't have the option of believing the facts and the stats and the reality. They'll believe the fantasy that's promulgated.
Well, actually, this like the Bush family is very interesting to me because they seem like they die of old age and they die in their sleep. They don't die for alleged crimes committed against humanity or whatever. They never charged with that, allegedly. But also, I heard there was a rumor that George W. Bush's mom and George H.W. Bush's wife, Barbara Bush, her dad is Aleister Crowley. Have you come across any information pertaining to that?
No, I've heard that. I maybe I heard about that recently. I don't know where I heard that, but I heard about that. Aleister Crowley
look like Aleister Crowley.
Ordo Templi Orientis and major mysticist in the 19th, I'd say 20th century. So people who don't know who Aleister Crowley is,
I think break it down.
Black Sabbath or one of these British bands did a song called Mr. Crowley.
Okay.
Yeah, that I heard, and that's so. Like I said, I just mentioned Skull and Bones, right? So we start at the collegiate level. Now let's move to another level, right? Let's move to a more scenic, relaxed, comfortable. I mean, after all, if you're in a place called the Tomb, how comfortable can that be, right?
Right.
So a lot more scenic, relaxed, comfortable place. A place called Monte Rio, California, right? This is where the second aspect, the second quote unquote secret society is, and it's called Bohemian Grove. Bohemian Grove is actually the retreat of a club known as the Bohemian Club. The Bohemian Club is in San Francisco, but their retreat is Bohemian Grove, and Bohemian Grove is located in the Russian River Valley in Monte Rio, California. And it's over 2,000 acres that are owned by this Bohemian Club. And it was started in the late 19th century. I believe it was 1872, but the late 19th century. And it was actually created as an artist retreat. It was created by, as a club for artists, like journalists and artists. Its motto comes from Shakespeare's Midsummer Night's Dream, which is "Weaving spiders, come not here." And the point, of course, was that this isn't like your average retreat. It's not a business retreat per se. You're not here to talk shop. At least that was the sort of mindset at the very beginning when it was an artist retreat and it was funded by artists and journalists. And then it eventually came to be subsumed, taken over in some fashion by ruling class elites and business types to become what it is now. The membership is $25,000, and they have a waiting list, right? So, but if you're a member, of course, you get to go every summer generally to Monte Rio and take part in this 2-week, I think it's about 2 weeks, retreat. Now, part of what goes on, and you can see a picture there, that is the gigantic owl, which is located in a part of Bohemian Grove. It's the enormous owl. And that is, I think there's an altar below the owl, if I'm not mistaken. And so what they have there is the ceremony. I believe it kicks off Bohemian Grove, but it's a ceremony, and the ceremony is known as cremation of care, right? Care is put in this coffin, and it's sort of burnt. to get rid of, I guess it's sort of a metaphorical aspect in regard to the cremation of care. But care is personalized in a sense and put in this coffin, and it's burnt. I think there's supposedly something that comes down like a fireball and just burns up. But what you see there in the picture, like I said, is the centerpiece when it comes to Bohemian Grove, the enormous owl. That's something like 40 feet or more, 40 feet or so large. At least, it's at least 40 feet, 40 feet big, or 40 feet up. So you see that thing towers over, right? And so they have as part of this, but what they have featured there at Bohemian Grove are a number of, in a sense, it's almost like a convention of sorts. It's a retreat. It's almost somewhat like a convention in a sense, in that what you have are, you have off the record, of course, discussions. People are come there as, you have people who are invited as guests. It is an all male organization, from what I understand. No women are allowed, unlike Skullenbones, which I spoke about previously. I think Skullenbones has let in women, but Bohemian Grove does not. And I don't think Bohemian Club does either, but Bohemian Grove definitely does not. It is an all male retreat. No women allowed at all. And so what they have, besides the cremation of care ceremony, is they have various types of lectures and talks. One of the aspects of the events that they have there is what are known as the Lakeside Talks. I think I had seen something like a picture somewhere when I was watching a documentary or something that dealt with Bohemian Grove. Now, that picture that you see right there, I believe it features Richard Nixon, if I'm not mistaken. And
yeah,
I think
Ronald Reagan too. And Ronald
Reagan, yeah. So you have Ronald Reagan and you have Richard Nixon.
Yeah.
Now, what's interesting about Bohemian Grove is that supposedly Ronald Reagan, not Ronald Reagan, but Richard Nixon and Dwight Eisenhower had met at Bohemian Grove. When I was reading a biography of Nixon and Eisenhower, I guess as a political team, it noted that they had supposedly first met or had met early on at Bohemian Grove. And one of the, let me see, one of the parts, I'm trying to remember the name of it. One of the parts that litter the entire grove, one of the aspects that litter the grove. But in this picture, of course, you're seeing part of what goes on at Bohemian Grove. Like I said, you have the Lakeside Talks, which is near, of course, beautiful, from what I've seen, what little I've seen, a beautiful stream of water. And of course, you have the redwood trees because they're in this basically enormous, the acreage there is surrounded by or basically consists of amounts of redwood trees. So you have all these redwood trees around. And they kind of provide a bit of a canopy of sorts. They kind of provide make it hard to see Bohemian Grove from the air if you're going to take a helicopter and try to get a look at it. So you have these Lakeside Talks, and what's significant about the talks and discussions, the formal events, the lectures, the talks that go on, is they're about various aspects of foreign policy, about U.S. policy, various political, and I think to a certain extent business policies as well, business aspects as well. And though one could argue that decisions are not made necessarily at Bohemian Grove, certainly discussions are had at Bohemian Grove, discussions about various aspects of policy that are important or that have impacts on the United States and on other countries. So it's this retreat, but it's a retreat that has a bigger significance because of all the ongoing policy discussion, all the ongoing probably economic discussions, political discussions, all kinds of discussions. Now, Bohemian Grove is primarily known, I think it's more oriented toward Republicans, because when you hear about Bohemian Grove, I mean, I'm sure you could have Democrats as guests, but it's largely, you know, it's largely oriented toward Republicans, which is when you see Reagan and Nixon there. That's an interesting point that someone just said. Nixon went in, he hated it. If you listen to the Nixon tapes, and some of them are available on YouTube, Nixon talks about Bohemian Grove. He discusses it. I won't use the exact term because this is YouTube, but he thought it was, let me just say, he thought it was the most, he didn't use this term, but I will. He thought it was the most effeminate place that he had ever been to. That's another aspect of Bohemian Grove that I've heard some discussions about, which is the sexual component of Bohemian Grove. But I don't want to get into that, because that's not my thing when it comes to these secret societies. But again, barring that this is YouTube, and there's certain words and certain things you can't say on YouTube, Nixon found it sort of, I'll just say, not as manly for his tastes. And he, you know, which is funny because he went there at least a few times. So he was there, and he obviously was a member. He also, it's interesting that
you talk about Eisenhower and Nixon connection. They actually, their families married, right? Was Nixon's daughter married to, how did it work? Was Nixon's daughter married to one of Eisenhower's sons or something like that? How did that work?
That's correct. I believe so. Okay. I believe so. Yeah. But yeah, you know, it's interesting because I believe they met at Bohemian Grove. That's what I've read. And of course, like I said, I associate it mostly with Republicans. Now, much like there isn't a whole lot of like you had The Good Shepherd, right? That movie, which dealt a little with Skullenbones. Not much because it was about the CIA. There is a movie that does deal kind of with Bohemian Grove, not directly, but kind of indirectly. It's called Teddy Bear's Picnic. It's directed by Harry Shearer. Okay. I saw it at a film festival years ago when I was a film reviewer and film critic. And I actually interviewed Harry Shearer. So,
now is he the voiceover artist for The Simpsons too?
Yeah, I think he does some voiceover work
for The Simpsons, right? And he lives in New Orleans.
But he had done for The Simpsons. I don't know if he still does.
I mean, I think he one of the main ones. I'm thinking he getting paid long-term money. He getting that good long-term money. I think he one of the main voiceover actors for The Simpsons, or was at one point. But he said Teddy Bear's Picnic. That's the name of the movie.
I think that's the movie. I mean, I hadn't seen it in years, but I know that kind of deals with a Bohemian Grove type.
Well, you know, you mentioned The Simpsons. People I understand a lot of these so-called TV content creators, they got U.S. intelligence connections. The people that create the X-Files and The Simpsons, how they predict the future? Because they're part of U.S. intelligence. Go back to Operation Mockingbird. And also you got the Skull and Bones movies that came out maybe like 20 years or whatever years. I saw the first Skull and Bones movie, and I think they had 2 more. Somebody mentioned in his chat they made 3 Skull and Bones movies, you know, based on the Skull and Bones. Right. But you know what's interesting? Like I think one of Booker T. Washington's last speeches he did was at Yale, which is the home of Skull and Bones. Next thing you know, he was dead. But also Booker T. Washington spoke out against the U.S. occupation of Haiti. So we just lost the Haitian president recently under questionable circumstances. So a lot of people think that Booker T. Washington was killed by these powerful forces as well. But anyway, go ahead, sir. I mean to interrupt.
No,
go off on the tangent.
No, okay. So so we're dealing with Bohemian Grove, and as I mentioned, Bohemian Grove is again interesting as a retreat. So we started with Skull and Bones, secret society, collegiate, right? You know, you have to, one of the aspects of Skull and Bones is you're supposed to share secrets. right? You come in and you share secrets about either your family or yourself. Some of them are sexual in nature. If you saw the movie The Good Shepherd, supposedly it has one of the rituals, supposedly. And then, so you're in a society like Skull and Bones, right? You were at Yale, you graduate, you move on, and you get to say you decide to be, say you become a politician or a businessman, well-to-do. We'll just say politician. And so you wind up managing to get into Bohemian Club and become a member and go to Bohemian Grove. And be a part of that. So now it's on to my final secret society.
Okay.
And the final secret society that I'll be talking about is not so much a secret society, so much, but a gathering, much like Bohemian Grove, which is in the summer, which is one of the reasons I talked about it now. It's normally held during summer, Bohemian Grove. After all, you know, summer's a good time, you know, sun.
Oh yeah,
fresh
before
air.
you get too deep in there, also you talked about movies. Check out that last season of House of Cards with Kevin Spacey. They exposed the Bohemian Grove thing. That's probably why they got rid of him. Because they actually did a couple episodes, I think one episode around the Bohemian Grove. He was invited to a Bohemian Grove type of thing. And that was the season that, after that season, they kicked him off the show. That's Kevin
Yeah,
Spacey.
you know, I used to watch House of Cards, and
that last season was horrible, man. It was not deserving of that type of show. They could have did better. But Kevin Spacey, they exposed too much, I believe, with the Bohemian Grove episode they did the season he was on, the last season. And also you got to look at the X-Files. Like I said, a lot of these folks have U.S. intelligence connections. A lot of these news shows, their top consultants are CIA or U.S. intelligence. So you don't even know what you're looking at.
That's you know, the nexus between intelligence and media was exposed a long time ago. John Stockwell, who's a former CIA agent, talked about it. Involvement of the CIA in regards to media. And that's nothing really new, but of course it's not going to get a lot of play. It's not going to get a lot of discussion.
Well, it is new to Americans are the most babied and pampered group of people on the planet. Everybody knows what's going on with us except for us. It's like if you walk into a room with your wife, everybody know your wife's screwing everybody at the party but you. That's how Americans are treated when it comes to information and history. We got a short attention span. People look up Operation Mockingbird. That's all you got to do.
There you go.
All this shit is controlled with predictive programming. All of it.
Right. You know, you're saying something that I've known for years.
Walter Cronkite, the most trusted man in America. Walter Cronkite was a part of Bohemian Grove. That's
guy. He supposedly did the voice of, I don't know, it was the voice of the owl. He did voiceover for one of the aspects at Bohemian Grove. But here's the thing. You bring up a point that I've known for years. And it's a point I thought about. I said this to somebody privately when I was not long after 9/11 or sometime after 9/11. I think 9/11 really showed how naive, since it's 20th anniversary, how naive or how purposefully kept naive a lot of Americans are. They don't really understand the role of the U.S. around the world. They don't understand U.S. foreign policy. They don't understand what the U.S.'s role historically has been in other nations and other continents. Latin America is an excellent example. They don't understand that the Monroe Doctrine is not something that's on a piece of paper and in history books. It is real, it is active, and it is ongoing as we speak, because it powers everything in regards to Latin American policy, whether presidents and their cabinet members want to admit it or not. And of course, the Monroe Doctrine basically is hemispheric control. U.S. is going to be the influential power broker in the hemisphere. That includes Central and South America. So it's dominion over the hemisphere. So
that's why they got rid of Chavez, right? Allegedly, Hugo Chavez out of Venezuela. No, we worked on him overtime to get him out.
Chavez was a thorn. See, here's the interesting part. You know, we have Oliver Stone. Oliver Stone's coming out with a documentary. It was at Cannes recently, called JFK Revisited.
Oh yeah, I want to check that out. Wow. Yeah, I
He's
heard
gone
about it.
back after 30 years with JFK
Mm-hmm.
and looked into the Kennedy assassination. The Kennedy
Mm-hmm.
assassination, a whole other thing. But he's
Mm-hmm.
gone and done it as a documentary. And Oliver has been doing documentaries. He's been doing
Yeah.
some films, narrative films, but he's been doing documentaries. He's an interesting career. I think one of Oliver Stone's best work, I don't know if he'll watch a show like this or something like that, but I think
Mm-hmm.
Oliver Stone has been given short shrift for years. And I say that's not just somebody who's reviewed films. I used to review films at one point for several
Mm-hmm.
years online, but as somebody who also was a journalist for over 20 years. I think Oliver Stone has been given short shrift. He's been boxed in. He's been fenced in. He's been seen as some kind of conspiracy theory oriented
Right.
manipulator of history. And he's been dealt a very raw hand by the major media and the major press in this country.
Mm-hmm.
And which is sort of sad. But one of the best things Oliver Stone ever did, I think, and I think that his movie JFK is a masterpiece. Technically, it's a masterpiece. One of the best things he ever did was a series for Showtime called The Untold History of the United States.
It's good.
If you have not seen this show, take a look at it. It may be on YouTube. I'm not quite sure. I've seen it on YouTube, but check this out. I think it's some of his best work. I think it's amongst his best work.
Mm-hmm.
And I also read the book, which Stone did with Peter Kuznick.
Okay.
And Untold History of the United States is, I think, Oliver Stone's one of his finest achievements. And I think he's a guy who's been given short shrift, primarily, though not wholly.
Did he go to Yale, though? Was he also part of that Yale crew?
Well, he was at Yale.
During the time with Bush and Kerry, right? He was there when they was there.
I think he was there for about a year or so. Because he dropped out, came back, and then left. And he ended up going later to NYU because he went to film school at NYU.
He also went to Vietnam, right? Was he a part of the war?
Yeah. I think he taught in Vietnam for a little while, taught overseas, and then he ended up being a combat so he
wasn't a draft dodger like his fellow classmate, Bush.
Oh, no. He went and served. That's how he could do Platoon. That's how he could do Platoon, because he was an infantry.
Platoon was a great movie. You talking about a masterpiece. You know what I'm saying? That's a great movie.
Yeah. That's a Grunt's level eye view of the Vietnam War.
Mm-hmm.
Is Platoon. Yeah. But like I said, Oliver Stone's been given short shrift, I believe, especially ever since he did JFK. The knives were out for him after he did JFK in 1991. Now he's got this documentary. I haven't seen it yet. I'd like to, but JFK revisited Through the Looking Glass, because it's the 30th anniversary of JFK, his movie. So that's important. And so the last one that we're going to look at is interesting because the first two that we looked at are American oriented, right? Like I said, Skullenbones is at Yale University in Connecticut, New Haven, Connecticut, and Bohemian Grove's in California, Monte Rio. But Bilderberg isn't so much a place as it is a conference that is held every year generally, but it's not held in one location. It's held in different locations every year. Right. The Bilderberg Group is actually more of an international connection. It was founded in 1954 by a member of royalty, Prince Bernhard of the Netherlands, in that year, and it was held at the Bilderberg Hotel, I believe in Oosterbeek. And that's why it's named Bilderberg, because it was the name of the hotel that they met at in 1954. So when we talk about secret societies or secret organizations or secret conclaves and conventions, this, of course, is normally a 3-day event. I think the first one was held, I think, from May 29th to the 31st. So it's a 3-day event, and it normally features some of the elite members of the business community, corporate community, political community, and maybe some other invited guests or individuals. And when we talk about privacy, when we talk about secrecy, this is amongst the most secret of events. Unless very few media are allowed in, and if they're allowed, they cannot write about it, broadcast it, or discuss it. So if you're one of the handpicked and selected media members that attend Bilderberg, you cannot discuss anything that goes on at the Bilderberg Group conference. Cannot. That's part of the, like I said, Chatham House rules, and part of the rules for attending Bilderberg. You cannot discuss what goes on. So, can't interview anybody, can't talk to anybody, can't talk about it yourself. And that's true of the participants as well. They can't discuss it. They can't talk about it. And so it's normally held usually in a very expensive hotel or very well to, like a resort. Not always, but normally like a resort area. And, again, the emphasis is on off the record. It's about having discussions, having formulations, having talks and presentations where you can listen, you can hear what goes on, but you can't talk about it. So mum is the work, as the old expression goes. Now, Bilderberg is known kind of for creating new stars, or creating people who will go on to be future leaders, future political leaders. For example, Bill Clinton, who I believe at the time was at best the governor of Arkansas, attended a Bilderberg conference early on. And normally what that means is they're when they invite people, they're probably looking at them as future potential political stars, maybe future business titans, possibly. So it seems like it's a talent spotting event as much as it is a secretive, off the record conference for discussion of issues and maybe promulgations of policy, although that doesn't necessarily have to happen. Margaret Thatcher also is one that's cited as somebody who attended the Bilderberg. British, sort of a British politician by the name of Dennis Healy was quoted as saying, because he was involved with Bilderberg, he's quoted as saying, "We are part of getting along younger politicians who are obviously, rising, to put them together with financiers and industrialists who often offer them wise words." So when I mentioned talent spotting and sort of looking to create future stars, Healy seems to have stated that, and seems to have tapped into that and to have defined that. Because that seems to be what Bilderberg partly, I mean, if it has a mission, besides the fact that it was created really to deal with post-war Europe and what could be done to create sort of, if not a new world, then what would arise from, if not the chaos, then the sort of ashes of World War II. Of course, 54, World War II had ended for more than 5 years, 5 or 6 years. So, but I think it's changed. I mean, I think it was centered on Europe and post-war Europe. And now I think it's a little bit more global in orientation, a bit more international in orientation. And I think it's focused on, as I see it, talent spotting, looking out for new rising political talent and maybe business talent, and putting them into this conference where they can interact with the heavy hitters and the movers and shakers within the worlds of politics and finance and other forms of business.
I think that's the one I remember, like what Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama invited back in 2008. Is that the Bilderberg or
That's the belief that they attended. That's the belief that they attended.
Okay.
That's the suspicion. That's the belief that they attended.
I thought I saw footage of that. Cause also, I mean, you talked about Alex Jones earlier, and give props to Alex Jones for exposing the Bohemian Grove. Like he actually snuck in there allegedly and got recorded the ritual of the Bohemian Grove. Because Alex started out on public access TV down in Texas. He actually covered the Waco thing, and so he paid dues. And people talking about, well, he's opposition, he's this and that. Everybody, we all tools and pawns in this game, in this system. If you still paying taxes into this system, if you still depending on a paycheck, you a pawn like everybody else. It's just different levels of being a pawn and being collateral damage and being a sacrifice. So it is what it is.
No, that's one way to look at it.
I mean, that's the only way, really, because majority of people losing, man. It's like if you look at sports, majority of the fans lose. It's the owners that make money. Like last year, when they had all those leagues cancel their regular scheduling, you look at the NBA owners like Steve Ballmer, who started with him, with Bill Gates. The man made billions of dollars last year on a show in the NBA season. The owners don't lose money. I mean, people who own, that's why they make it so hard for certain groups and individuals to own things in a system like this. To truly own, I ain't talking about when you think you own something because you pay taxes on it and they can eminent domain your crap. You don't own it. You just renting. You just leasing. If they can come and take your stuff, if they can seize your stuff without your consent, you just a renter like everybody else.
Well, that's usually the case when it comes to owning a home. People believe
so stop calling it ownership then. Stop calling it what it ain't.
Yeah. Well, it's they want people to own, when you look at encouraging home ownership, but the problem is if you have to pay a mortgage to a bank, do you really own the home?
And Dick Greger told me mortgage is like the morgue where they keep dead things.
Right. Well, supposedly it comes from a French term, and the part of that means death, right?
Yeah. So why are you telling people to own something that caused death? Yeah. I mean, the trickery, man.
So we just looked at these three secret societies. The first, of course, was Skull and Bones, the Collegiate Secret Society. Then we go to Bohemian Grove. Well, I should say Skull and Bones, with the Collegiate Secret Society at Yale University in New Haven, Connecticut. So you started that college level. Then you go to Bohemian Grove, which is in Monte Rio, California, near the Russian River Valley. And that's post-collegiate. You're already in a career. You're already maybe doing okay for yourself. And then you have Bilderberg, depending on how far you go as a politician, that you get invited to the Bilderberg conference. And that's major because it's international. You have people from around the world, movers and shakers, and all kinds of major power brokers that are at the Bilderberg conference. So in a sense, I kind of wanted to build it like a ladder or like a structure, almost like a pyramid, the base and then going upward. It gets more elite if it's a pyramid, right? Because it gets smaller and smaller and smaller as it goes up. And so those are the three societies that I wanted to examine. I'm also open to, since we have a little bit of time here, I'm also open to maybe just mentioning, if anyone wants to mention one or two other secret societies, and to hear from the chat about what they think about secret societies. What their views are.
What's your take on Steve Coakley?
Oh, Steve Coakley?
Yeah.
He was kind of an interesting guy. He was a guy that worked in Chicago politics. He was like an aide to a politician. And then he ended up getting, I think he ended up getting fired or something along that line. And kind of was propelled into what he was doing, which was giving lectures about the so-called boule. Sorry, water break.
All right, you pause it. We need water.
The so-called boule. And so he would go around giving lectures. I mean, I think he was at the time. I mean, he's somebody that probably should have. I don't know if he eventually did, but he's somebody that could easily have been a guy on YouTube doing that if the technology had existed at the time.
Well, he died in 2012 under questionable circumstances in a hospital in DC, I believe. But what he did, his contribution was exposing the so-called Black Boule. That secret society of fractured sororities and other things. He exposed that, and it came to a cost of him. It was career suicide. You know, he was
pretty much.
He could not get on radio or anything like that. When he got on radio a couple times, I mean, he was just too much of a truth teller.
He was pretty much shut out. He was shut out. I mean, he was. If you looked at his lectures, they're in restaurants and some of them are in halls and so forth. But he was a guy who was basically having to do what he did in a marginal way. It was all marginal. He was never in the mainstream, and not like YouTube. Even though YouTube is interesting because it's a combination of the marginal and the mainstream. Can you look at it? It's marginal, and you could be a marginal figure, but you could be mainstream that you're on because of technology. You can get on and you could have thousands of followers. And
they still deplatform you like they did with Alex Jones and Minister Farrakhan. I mean, to tell the truth is an unpopular act. You're never popular when you're a truth teller. You're never popular, you know. Even if you have a following, it can always be bigger because you are heightening the contradictions and helping folks to free themselves from just going along to get along. There's going to be pushback. And Steve Coakley, he didn't do things in a marginal way. The system marginalized his truth telling, but it was impactful because you got to understand he did things with people with Baba Dick Gregory. They did lectures about the King assassination. He did things with Khalid Muhammad, the great Khalid Muhammad. Talk about the assassination attempt on him in California with him present. You pay a price for standing on truth, man. There's no rewards. I just saw them unveil a statue to Ida B. Wells here in my hometown of Memphis, not that far away on Bill Street. They ran Ida B. Wells out of here when she was 29 years old in Memphis for telling the truth about why they were killing black folks, why they were lynching black people. She lost her best friend. She was a godmother to his daughter. Thomas Moss was a successful businessman. The only reason why he was lynched because he had an economic impact that white folks couldn't tolerate. His competitors could not tolerate. And so Ida B. Wells ran out here at the age of 29. Thank God she was not in Memphis at the time. But what I'm saying is it took them almost 130 years later just to get her a statue. And if people stood on truth like Ida B. Wells did, black folks would be in a different position right now. We got to understand most people are cowards, man. Most people, Gary Wells should not have to sacrifice his career for telling the truth about the CIA and the drug trade and its impact on the black community, so-called black community. Dr. King should not have been the only one targeted on April 4th, 1968 on that balcony. What I'm saying is, let's be real. Most people are cowards. Most people don't stand on anything. And most of us got it coming. So when we say we don't deserve this, what Bobby Dick Gregory said, you pay taxes in a system that drop bombs on people you don't even know. So baby, don't complain when the bombs come back on your ass because you're not innocent. Because you have contributed to a system that undermines people's civil and human liberties. And for these bastards to have the audacity to die of old age is bullshit. The good die young. Why Fred Hampton died? Look, Fred Hampton died in his bed by orders of the state at 21. George H.W. Bush get to die at almost 100 years old, peacefully in his sleep. All the alleged innuendo and mischief that these bastards have done for almost a century. George Bush should have been taken out when his plane went down in enemy territory, but he survives. They shoot JFK in broad daylight. I mean, in the middle of the day, blew his head off like a watermelon. He wasn't even 50. Bush can recall where he was at when Pearl Harbor happened, when he heard about it, but he can't recall almost 20-some years later where he was at when he heard about JFK being assassinated in his home state of Texas. In a city where he does business.
As Kurosawa said in the title of one of his films, "The Bad Sleep Well." And that's and that's one of the sad tragedies of life in this country and in others is that those elites, those in the ruling class, get to commit crimes and get away with their crimes and to sleep well, while those who don't commit any crimes and who are saddled and who are born into or saddled with poverty or working class chaos or working class lives, find that they can't sleep as well, and their lives don't end up uncomfortable. Some of them wind up living in tents in cities across the country. They wind up with nothing. They wind up with sleeping on a sidewalk. But they have a tent, that means something. Some of them wind up on the sidewalk. Some of them end up begging for money, asking for money. So while others get to not only make millions upon millions of dollars, but also go into spacecraft and blast off into the great beyond and come back and give $100 million to a certain someone on CNN.
Oh, Van Jones.
I will not end. Yeah, you can name him.
Who's dead from Orange Mound. He's from Orange Mound. No, Van Jones was born in Jackson, Tennessee. I believe he has a sister who's his twin. But his dad is from Memphis, from Orange Mound. And I remember meeting Van Jones some years ago. And I had a lot of high hopes for the brother. But what we got to understand, everybody make deals, man. Nobody's clean. Nobody's hand is clean. Everybody made a deal. So depending on how smart you are, you best make the best deal for you. Get as much as you can, because if you're going to sell your soul, sell it to the highest bidder. And I'm not knocking Van. I don't know issue. I don't get into personalities like that anymore. I don't care about personalities like that. It's like the mailman. The mailman could be a crackhead. Long as he give me my mail on time, give me all the mail that's meant for me. I don't care.
Well, apparently I never got that contract because I've never sold anything.
Well, you know, hey, people offer. You gotta read the room. You gotta read because people don't understand. It's like when Tracy McGrady, when he's on the Rachel Nichols.
I never get those opportunities.
No, everybody gets those opportunities.
Everybody
gets those opportunities. People can't discern what they were or what they are.
I mean,
people offering you stuff all the time. People make deals all day, but a lot of people make stupid deals. People make deals for Popeye's chicken sandwich or something. Well, I'll give my soul for a Popeye's chicken sandwich. That's on you. Otherwise, look, Tracy McGrady, T-Mac. I didn't know how close he was to Kobe Bryant until after Kobe died. He did an interview with Rachel Nichols. He said Kobe made a deal. And people could say, what do you mean? He said he wanted to be bigger than Michael Jordan. He wanted to die young. He made that deal when he was a teenager. So he fulfilled, mission accomplished. He died at 41, which is young. He is bigger than Jordan. People say, oh, he's not. But to the players like Kyrie Irving, the younger NBA basketball players, like Giannis said, Kobe inspired him to win a championship. Kobe was their Jordan. For this young generation of basketball players, Kobe was their God. Kobe was their Michael Jordan. So he made that deal. And when you make them deals, you don't know when you got to cash in your chips. And when you make those deals, you killing your legacy too. So they killed his daughter who's going to be his basketball legacy. Just like the Kennedy, like Papa Kennedy made a deal. He made the deal and he paid for it with the assassination of his sons and questionable deaths of some of his other people. Right. He made a deal. I don't feel sorry for the Kennedys. I don't feel sorry for none of these people. They made deals. I don't feel sorry for people like that. They made a deal.
Right. They made their bed and now they have to die in it.
Yeah, that's everybody. But everybody making deals. I can't.
But here's
you can't complain about smoking cigarettes when you was 15.
I don't get those deals. All I can say is in my life, in my existence,
you got the deal. You didn't recognize it for
I don't get those deals.
Look. You type dude that said,
wait. The deals and they get to be uber successful and they get to be rich and they get to be beyond their wildest dream. But I never had those deals. I never had that come my way. And you know what? I'm perfectly fine with that.
But
I'm old anyway. It's not going to come my way. I'm old anyway, and you know what? I'm glad. I had my career. I'm fine with it. I know that lightning will not strike in a bottle for me. I just want to make enough money to retire again. That's all I care about.
But it's like, okay, it's like if you a shy guy, and a girl like you, everybody know this girl like you, but it's like, I'm not sure. She got to come out and get butt naked and have her legs spread. Here's my pussy. Pat it. If you don't get that, I didn't know you. I wasn't sure. I did. See, some people need to have that type of experience. Here, take my pussy. Here, me too. You can have it too. Here, you just can't figure that shit. You don't know how to flirt. You don't know how to read body language and all this. Yeah, most people don't know how to recognize. Is this
something you've encountered? I have to ask you after this. Is this something you've dealt with in real life? Yeah. Is this something that your fans do now?
Are aggressive
they come
now.
To you and like, hey, I like you, Ron. How about
here's
this?
My pussy, here's my teeth, suck on them. Here's the deal. Lick my nipples. Some people don't get it. Everybody get a chance to make a deal.
Oh my goodness gracious. Oh, I'm gonna get
a lot of WAP on the table in the bedroom. I wish I go back in time and get this WAP I left. I left a lot of WAP, focusing on the wrong details. A lot of times people trying to get with women that don't want you. Get with the women that work with you. Get with folks that want to make a deal with you. Stop getting with folks that don't want to make deals with you that you can't have. Get with the people that want to make deals. That's how you get what you want.
So you decided you said that you decided to choose what's behind door number 3 instead of what's behind door number 1. Or
I'll let the person behind door number 3 open it up and open their legs and let me get easy access. Make it easy. Okay, for people, right? You say don't let people use you. Why the fuck you exist if people don't use you? You useless then. Who want to be used?
I mean, who wants to be used?
I want to be used.
I don't.
You don't understand.
I'm glad you said it.
Why be afraid of being used? Why be afraid of being used?
Because why being afraid of being used?
Right. Because if you got some people you got to leverage that. You got to know how to leverage being used. People get used, don't know what the fuck they want.
I don't. That's not my thing.
What do you want? Okay, Albert, what do you want? What do you want?
What do I want?
Yeah.
What do I want? Just in general?
You trying to ask me to tell you what you should want and how you should want it. I'm asking you.
No. I'm just looking at it and I'm saying, I
didn't put no extras on it. Shit, you want a burger? You want a chicken sandwich? What do you want? I don't know. You want to be
in life? What do you want? Specifically,
I'm trying to prove a point.
What do I want?
What do you want?
You know what I want?
Okay.
Basically, just to move out of. I mean, if you just in general, just to move out of here, move out of Hawaii,
there you go. That's
and
all.
Then eventually to have enough money to retire again. That's it.
So that's what I'm saying. When you ask people that, what do they want? A lot of folks can't tell you what the hell they want. They trying to ask you what you mean, or what I want right now. What I want. Nah, just tell me what you want. And see, a lot of you don't know themselves.
I'm sure they can tell you what they want. It's just that they don't want to tell you what they want.
A lot of people don't know. A lot of people don't know themselves. That's the problem. People don't spend enough time alone or being hated or being villainized. See, I've never been.
Why would you want to spend time being hated and villainized?
No, it helps that understand. Not that you want to, but sometimes you need to go through that to understand who you are to you.
I don't agree with that. I don't think being a villain, being hated.
It don't have nothing to do with you, man. Like, I don't care. Look. You got folks in YouTube that hate you. You're not a bad guy. You're a very intelligent guy, articulate. Well, you know what I'm saying?
I know that, and you know that.
Gifts, but others don't know people out there that hate you anyway. I don't give a damn how good. I don't give a fuck how much I like you. There's folks out there that don't even know you. They hate you for whatever reason. Ain't shit you know about.
That's one of
the you can save their lives. They still hate you. So what are you gonna do about it? You gonna feel upset about it? You gonna be sad? Whatever.
I can't say that I feel sad, but
you should experience of being.
Okay. No one. Here's the thing you gotta understand.
Okay.
You can understand why there are people who don't like you, but going through the experience of people trying to attack you and being hated, it's not one that I think most people want to go through. I think they would rather be. They just want to. I mean, you mentioned people are cowards. A lot of them are cowards. I think a lot of people are cowards. They just want their comfortable chair, and they want their big screen plasma, or I don't even know if it's plasma anymore, but their smart TV, watch their Netflix and watch their Hulu and watch their movies and TV shows, and have someone around, have a girlfriend or boyfriend around for which they can, have a bit of, and have a bit of a quote unquote discussion with. You know what I mean? And have enough money to buy things they like. And that's what they want. And I think a lot of people want that. They're not very brave unless they have to be. They're not very, they don't challenge anything unless they're forced to. They're not going to be against anything unless it's necessary for them. That's the way it is for a lot of people. But no one, I think, wants to, like, in terms of the whole cancellation thing and so-called cancel culture, no one wants to be impacted by that because they don't want to deal with the repercussions. But it's repercussions from things they did. If you put out a stupid tweet or you put out a dumb video or you said something that's sure to get you in trouble, or you did something that's sure to get you in trouble, then you have to expect there are going to be repercussions for it, and you got to pay the price. I mean, whether you like it or not, you could try to spin your way and talk your way around it, but might very well pay the price for it. No one likes that, even if it's people that no, and it's not just about cancel culture or anything like that. It's just people in general. They don't want to be attacked. They don't want to be vilified. They don't want to be humiliated or embarrassed or the object of outright, personal destruction. They don't want any of that. Who does? It's just, so being hated is not a thing that's enjoyable unless you're somebody who gets off on that. If you get off on people hating you, then it's fun for you. But if you don't, then it's probably agony for you. And I think for everyone else, it's just uncomfortable and awkward. Having haters is normal. Having people who dislike you is normal. But I think efforts to hate and dislike you, organized, unorganized, attacks, is not normal. But it's become normal on YouTube. It's become normal on social media. It's become normal on other parts of the internet. So that's why I say you can't let the lie define you. You have to define yourself by putting the truth out there. And when you put the truth out there, you give people the option against the lie. They have a choice, but you have to give them the choice. Because if you don't give them the choice, they won't have a choice but to believe the lie and thus have no choice but to define you according to lie because they don't know any better.
Why can't we be friends? Why can't we be friends? Why can't we be friends? Okay. Bravo. So how can we find? I mean, ask you this, guy. I just thought, in your opinion, from your point of view, are secret societies, are they good or bad? Are they necessary evils? Do we need them, or should we abolish all secret societies?
Do we need secret societies? No, we don't need them. Secret societies are fundamentally about elites. And if you're not an elite, then eventually the things they discuss and they talk about will filter down to you in some way. But they don't involve you personally, and you're not included. So secret societies in many respects are anti-democratic if you believe, or people believe, in democracy, however you define that. They're essentially anti-democratic. They're also pro-private interest. They're ultimately about private interest. They're never about public interest. There's nothing charitable about them to me. There's nothing beneficial about them. They exist because, at least the three that I know, control your narrative. And of course, that's what these secret societies, to an extent, have some control over it. They want to control narratives too. So they're about
Yeah, that's my whole point. I was not saying that nobody wants to be targeted for hate, but you gotta understand. I've been bullied all my life. I've been bullied by individuals and institutions and all types of stuff, and to this day. And my thing is, at 41, I'm still standing on my square. I'm still speaking out. I'm still amplifying my voices. I'm still allowed using my platforms, my gifts to help amplify other people's voices. Bullies are necessary evils, man. Like you talking about, bullies are needed. You need bullies. Bullies will reveal yourself to you. Haters will reveal yourself to you. You may not like what you see in the mirror, but they will reveal who you are to yourself. You need folks to push back on you. Tension.
I don't believe in the necessity of
pressure
bullies.
Makes diamonds, man. Thank you.
That part, I don't believe in the necessity of bullies. I believe they're necessary. They're unnecessary. Bullies aren't a necessary evil. They're just evil. They're damaged individuals. Maybe they're damaged because of home life or because there's something within them. It's not always damage, but it's something within them. The ability to try to.
Bully could be somebody freedom fighter too, though. Bullets. I'm saying everything you, no matter how good you think you are morally, there's some people that see you as evil.
Years ago, here's what you got to understand when you mention bullies. You have to understand that bullies used to be an accepted part of American life, at least in schools and other parts. But there's been a reaction to bullies. And part of the reason I believe is because when people are threatened by people who seek to dominate them, which any bully seeks to do, it's created carnage. You can trace bullying to people who become school shooters. They get tired of having rocks.
Nah, they get tired of not having pussy. They're not getting pussy.
Being set on
not
fire.
The bullies, and being incels, right?
Talking
about incels. They're not getting pussy.
No. I'm talking about school shooters. I'm not talking about incels.
A lot of these school shooters not getting pussy. That's why they shooting everybody. They kill everybody because they can't get no pussy.
I'm talking about bullying. Incel. When you look at some of these school shooters,
it's about pussy.
Bullying is tied to that. And bullying also impacts people psychologically and emotionally. There's something positive about bullying somebody. Okay. It's not something that's healthy. It's not good. So that's why when the idea that bullying is necessary, nah, I don't think there's anything necessary.
Black folks are the most bullied people in America. Agree or disagree? Black people are the most bullied people in America. Agree or disagree?
Possibly, I could agree with that. It's possible.
I know it's true. I know it's true. What other group of people I told?
I'm discussing bullying. I'm looking at bullying in an individual context, and I don't think there's anything positive about bullying. Now, I have to admit, I was never bullied in high school. So, I used to be somebody who, I'm somebody who used to, no, you don't need adversaries may be a part of life, but you don't need bullies. You have enemies and you can have adversaries, but you don't need bullies. I used to believe
are people too.
If I ever thought about bullies,
bullies have people too.
I never thought much about bullies, and I just assumed that bullies were a part of life, that it was just a rite of passage, and that's just what people went through. But when I started looking at school shooters, and I started looking at not so much Columbine, but I started looking at other aspects that were related to bullying, I realized that bullying is not this sort of something, this rite of passage or this part of life that you just have to deal with. But it's a concerted effort to destroy people. So bullies are fundamentally the kinds of people. So bullies are villains, obviously. No matter what. You could be a popular person and be a bully. You could be an unpopular person and be a bully. But bullies are villains. They're evildoers. And the way you have to deal with these, and they should be treated as such. I don't think there's anything positive about bullying. I don't think there's anything good about it. Like I said, I used to write it off. I never thought about it. I used to think it's just a part of life you're going to have to deal with. But over the past few years, I've changed my mind. And I think that it causes more harm, psychological harm to people. And I think that it causes a lot of damage, especially in schools. And so I think things have changed to the extent where you have these anti-bullying campaigns. And because you got to protect, students have to feel the need to protect themselves, and they have to feel protected, if they're going to be in facilities. And bullying can occur for adults too, although it's a little different.
No, it's not different. It's same old, man. I'm gonna tell you something. The problem is not the bullies, the fact that people don't stand up for themselves. Well, you don't teach your kids how to fight back, and there's a lot of ways to fight back.
Yeah, but you gotta understand.
Like, it's grown people right now that's getting bullied at the job, getting bullied by the IRS. You ever been bullied by the IRS? I've been bullied by the IRS.
Yeah, but
it's an interesting angle.
If you're going to talk about the difference between adults and children, children are one thing when you're dealing with a school environment. When you're an adult, the way people respond to bullying.
The reason why there's bullies in the school environment is adults to facilitate that. The principal, the teachers, the administrators allowed the bullies to thrive in those settings.
So that's the point. You're just talking about what I'm allowing.
Blame Frankenstein for being Frankenstein.
Why bullying.
That's not the Frankenstein fault.
This is why bullying is something that has to be dealt with, because it's facilitated and overlooked by adults. They don't care.
Yeah,
again,
they Frankenstein. You can't blame Frankenstein for being Frankenstein. You got to
but you can do something about Frankenstein.
No, the bullying is just a Frankenstein product. Isn't when things go unchecked. It's like mob rule. It's like when you lynching black people, you got the sheriff, you got the preacher, the deacon, the lawyer, the school teacher, everybody at the lynching. Where's the morality?
Here's the point that you're making. You're saying that adults in
illegal killing of somebody.
Right. But you're saying adults in schools.
This is the mentality of the country. This is American history. This is American life.
But here's the point that I'm making. You just mentioned something. You're saying adults in schools facilitate it. Yeah. And that's why bullying goes on.
Yeah.
And that's very true. That's a problem. That's why bullying has to be dealt with in schools. But when you're dealing with adults, it's a lot more dangerous because adults don't have the break on themselves that children do, that teenagers do. Adults feel like they can do anything if pushed. Mm-hmm. So if somebody as an adult feels like is bullied, some of them will go to the extent of lashing out violently. They'll go and kill people. That's the problem. That's why bullying is an issue. About Michael Douglas falling down. When you stand up for yourself, it's one thing. You reach a point where you're cornered. And a cornered person, like a cornered animal, will react. They'll fight back. And what happens is when they do, it results in carnage. It can result in death. It can result.
But most time it doesn't, though. It's those the anomalies. Because most people just deal with bullying all their lives. People get all type of bullying, harassed, and they don't do nothing about it.
That's true, but the neighbors and shit, it can result in that. I mean, if you push people to a certain limit, they'll go off. I'll give you an example. In Pennsylvania, you had this, I think it was in Pennsylvania, you had this neighbor. These neighbors, they're screaming at this guy. They're calling him all kinds of names. He goes back to his house, takes his gun, and shoots them. One of the things he said to the lady, she's there screaming, he said, should have kept your mouth shut. That's what I mean when you talk about bullying, when you talk about harassment, when you talk about trying to push people around. Those are the kind of things that can happen. And that's why I say that bullying is not a positive force. It's a negative force. And when people react, and that's why you have to be very careful when you deal with people. Because if you push the buttons of the wrong people, they can react like that guy in Pennsylvania did.
That story, I know what you're talking about, and I saw the video and I read the whole thing is problematic. I ain't gonna talk about it on here, but it's just it's very problematic, that whole thing, because there's certain things I could not even find, like his simple picture. Where's the photo of this dude, of the so-called killer? Can't find it anywhere. But that's another story. See, a lot of things, this stuff is done to manipulate your emotions. Like a lot of these news stories and stuff like that about these police brutality things and all this other stuff. This is done to control people through their emotions. I always tell people,
that's
don't confuse
police
emotionalism
brutality.
with passion.
Yeah.
You can have passion and still have logic. That's how you create things. That's how things are created and manifested. But to have this emotionalism and get mad and triggered by any other thing is ridiculous. People are like we are in the Arrested Development state as a people, man. I mean, as American citizens, they treat people like kids.
Yeah, here's what I will say, just to finish my time here and finish this episode.
Yeah.
Here's what I'll say. No one that I say that bullying is a negative force, and it's a force. In the end, I think people fundamentally want to be left alone, depending on the individual. Most people want to be left alone, or a number of them want to be left alone.
I agree.
Others want to try to push people around. I don't have respect for people who try to push people around. I just don't. I never do like bullies, but again, I was somebody that accepted it as just a part of life. I just thought it was okay. Something you have to deal with, something that has to be the case. And it's unfortunate, it's sad, but that's the way it is. Now I feel, it may be a part of life, but it's a part that can be preventable. And I think it's a part that needs to be dealt with. And so the efforts by schools, I don't know if it's colleges that do this as well, but it's the efforts by schools to do this. Because when you look at the way things are, people shouldn't have to, quote unquote, stand up for themselves. It's probably fine to stand up for yourself, but at some point, you shouldn't have to let people know, hey, you've gone over the line, just leave me alone. You shouldn't have to do that. Now, I'm a realist, and some of these things can happen. But
that makes sense what you're saying. In a nice world.
Again, you shouldn't be in that position because, again, you never know where these people will come from. And again, when you push people, some of them will react in ways that end up being basically detrimental to you in a fatal way. Because some of these people will not play. That's the sad thing. That's why you have to be careful. Was it? I met Dick Grigor years ago when he was at University of Hawaii. I think it was Center for Hawaiian Studies, and I interviewed him because I know you were at the documentary. And he said, when I talked to him, he said, you have to know who to mess with, and you have to know who not to mess with. Right. And I'll leave it on that. You have to know who to mess with and not to mess with. So brother, thank you for having me on the show. Finally, glad I was able to come here and talk about some secret societies. Yes. I haven't talked about this in a long time because I'd done research years and years ago and never talked that much about it. I talked about conspiracies in film and TV on a show called Media Monarchy a number of years ago, I think over a decade ago. Okay. Or was analyzing it or looking at it in movies and TV shows. But again, I hadn't looked at this in a long time, and I'm glad I was able to talk about it today and talk about it on this episode. And thank you for having me.
I mean, it's an honor to have you all on always, man. And we could agree to disagree and still be agreeable. So, I mean, I respect you and your point of view and also what you bring to the discussion. And hopefully people will continue this discussion online and off as it pertains to not only secret society, but are bullies necessary? And it's a bully nation, man. I'm just saying, America don't get created without manifest destiny, and that's a bully doctrine. That's a bully. Eminent domain is bullying, as far as I'm concerned. But we'll talk about this another time. Thank you, brother Albert, so much. And
thank you for having me.
We love you, Matt. And where can we find you at? Because I got your information pinned in the chat.
Well, you can look up my blog. I've written a blog about current news and media at www.medium.com/@thedoctor50. That's medium.com/@thedoctor50.
So I'll make sure I have that.
You can find me on Twitter @Critic Inc. Okay. INC. That's @Critic INC. That's Twitter. And so Twitter, and then my blog.
Thank you so much.
And you can find me on Facebook too if you want. But thank you for having me, Ron. Thank you for having me again.
And we love you madly. You keep on producing and pushing and stay beyond category. So we're gonna do a disclaimer as usual. The views expressed by host and guests on the We All Be TV platform are not the official views, opinions, beliefs, or perspectives of We All Be News or the We All Be Group, Inc. We All Be News is an organization that thoroughly believes in supplementing the information narrative that is usually supplied by the corporate news entities with those viewpoints and expressions which may be marginalized or ignored for a plethora of reasons. We are about informing the general public on alternative perspectives as it relates to news and information, and letting the general public be the ultimate judge in deciding on how to use said information. Informed citizens are responsible citizens. Thank you all for your support. See, I know how to support the channel, the We All Be movement. Knowledge is the currency of the universe, but I still got to pay my light bill, my rent. So you could cash out your support, $ R2C2H2. You could Google Pay, PayPal, and I believe Zelle your support at r2c2h2@gmail.com. Also, we could Vimo that love at r2c2h2. And also, y'all can, wear Artivist art. People like my Artivist gear. That's my actual artwork that I put on shirts. Go below the description box. Go to that shelf. Direct you to our Teespring official Teespring site. Excuse me, R2C2H2's place. Also, you can order Artivist art to hang up in your house or your office. And I'm thankful for everybody who's been buying shirts and also ordering art. That's r2c2h2.com. So in the words of Great Duke Ellington, they love you madly. Y'all keep on producing and pushing, and know that the best is yet to come. One love. Signing off.